Hello, hello. A good evening to you all. So just quickly before I begin, a warm welcome to my new subscribers and the commenters and viewers from the previous video who might be lurking around for this promised episode. FYI, I tend to post and run. Being a small channel, I don't expect much engagement. And wow, the red versus blue button video blew up. I mean, it was nothing, I know. It was just a few hundred views at the time. But compared to my usual engagement, it was an explosion. So thank you. I wasn't talking to a wall for once. Alright, let's cue the intro and get into this episode. Now, egoism. Why do I say it's the moral path, and how did I come to this conclusion? Well, being the self-taught aspiring philosopher that I am, I kind of just stumbled upon it. I developed my own philosophical outlook from first principles, and found myself in the same camp as philosophical thinkers like Thomas Hobbes and Ayn Rand. But that's just the origin story. It's not the why. To answer this, we need to look at what egoism is, and maybe to some extent how it contrasts with altruism. Contrary to popular belief, egoism is not selfishness. It's just an acknowledgement of self-interest, and that it is our fundamental right as human beings to act within our interests. It's coined in the Latin word ego to mean I, referring to the self, and ism meaning the state of being or a doctrine / philosophy. And of course, in some cases, ideology. Now, this acknowledgement of self-interest is to understand everything humans do is out of self-interest. We can't escape it. And I've actually talked about this a lot on my channel. It's central to my views and videos on morality. So I'll try not to be repetitive. But this perception clashes with popular views of the differences between selfishness and selflessness, and ultimately, altruism. Where altruism says it prioritizes the well-being of others over self-interest, egoism points out that's impossible. You're only doing that for a reason that suits you, what you want in the first place. Which is fine. Okay, it doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong, but it is what you are doing. And what you want could be to be recognized as a good person, or you get satisfaction of doing what you think is good, or you simply don't want to feel guilty. There's a number of ways of looking at it, but if you examine the motivation, you'll find it was about what you wanted. Another misconception about egoism is that an egoist would not be generous or kind and instead be self-serving. This is incorrect. While the egoist position is about self-interest, it recognizes reciprocity and investment in others as still serving that interest. The rational or ethical egoist is only self-serving when it's not an infringement on others' self-interests. For example, it could be in my interests to be generous or kind to receive kindness or generosity in return. This is actually a very clear signal to another person that you are cooperative and a benefit to them. Which, if the egoist position is correct, is reliably how human beings form their relationships of mutual self-interested benefit. If one wishes to maintain this benefit, it makes sense to avoid being hostile and uncooperative. and instead reciprocate the signal to say they are also a benefit to you, which can be done with gratitude, friendship, or returning the favor when it's needed. It's not a straight transactional relationship. An egoist can invest as much as they like in another person, knowing it can be disproportionate if that person or society is important to them. An important person is obviously a friend, family member, or lover. You look out for their well-being, not because you're this saint of generosity, but because you value the bond you have together. You enjoy their company. You benefit from what they do for you. They need you, and you need them. It's all mutual self-interest. And this is actually far more desirable than a person just being kind or generous because it's a commandment or a contest. That kind of implies if it weren't for this obligation, you wouldn't actually care for another person at all. In this way, we understand it's nice to be wanted. It's nice to be needed. It's nice to be the object of another's desire. Oh yes, it's getting romantic at this point. Quick, someone get a fire hose. I shouldn't even bother with these jokes, I suck. But anyway, this investment in mutual self-interest can also extend to your wider society. The small gestures you do, holding the door open for others, letting someone pass you first, or giving directions, or even the first come first serve rule. All of this is fostering in your environment reciprocal and helpful behavior, which is in your interests, as opposed to fostering an untrustworthy environment where people are actually selfish and have every man for himself sort of situation. Now, we're getting to the point where an altruist might say, this is not egoism, but altruism. It's not. I am not sacrificing more than I'm willing to lose for the investment. And these small gestures fostering a high-trust society are not really any kind of significant sacrifice on my part. It's voluntary. I'm not going out of my way for things that I do not see as an investment or beneficial to my interests. And I do not feel guilty for not doing so. All the while, I especially don't feel guilty or think I've done anything wrong by taking the last packet of donuts on the store shelf, or refusing to give to charity or the homeless when they ask for money, or preserving my life at the expense of those threatening me. Because I got there first. It's my money. It's my life. I'm not obligated to care about what others wanted. Really, altruism is actually just a warped form of egoism, where one is so invested in the benefit of goodwill that they leave themselves vulnerable to feeling guilty or giving beyond what is necessary, and this actually leaves them further vulnerable to being manipulated and coerced with guilt-tripping and shaming tactics, even pushed into involuntary self-sacrifice. Whereas the egoist can see these manipulations for what they are and put up defenses. The defenses in question often look like apathy or selfishness to the untrained eye. And now we come to the hard part. Because what's funny is pathologically virtuous and altruist types often try to guilt and shame egoists when we don't go about things the way they want. They don't realize that we're immune to these manipulations and can get quite angry and say all sorts of horrible things tantamount to, "You're a bad person," for not self-sacrificing for the interests of others, and instead keeping to yourself. And then the beautiful but twisted irony kicks in. The altruists are actually the more selfish people. You see, under egoism, if I have any obligation to others, it is to respect the self-interests of others. on the condition that their interests are not threatening to infringe on mine. In all other circumstances, we can either enter into a mutually beneficial relationship or simply let each other go about our business. If another person decides to do something out of their own interests that I personally disagree with, all I can do is advise and make suggestions. But in no way do I have the place to coerce, blackmail, or force my will on them. That would be needlessly infringing on their interests when what they're doing doesn't actually affect me. I just disagree with it. Even if, however, there's someone I care about and they're making a mistake. True enough, that can affect me on an emotional level, but it doesn't affect my control over my own interests or choices, is the thing. In fact, I do have someone who's living in an unhealthy way right now, and that really could affect me. I might lose them. I don't want to lose them, but the way they live is still their decision, and I don't want to push them away either. So, at most, I get to strongly advise, maybe argue or persuade. But if they're adamant, I have to let them be and suffer the brunt of that discomfort. That is moral cooperation at its harshest. And it's actually a reality of moral cooperation. I think we delude ourselves at times into thinking a moral society would always be nice and comfortable, where everything goes the way we want it to, and we wouldn't have any disagreements with anybody. No. Just like accepting rejection, moral cooperation sometimes means accepting a thing didn't go the way you wanted, and that other people think differently to you. And this brings us to the contrast between the tyranny of 2021, the red-blue button, and who is truly selfish between the egoist and the altruist. The setting for 2021, get the jab or lose your job, was more in line with the altruist standard than the egoist standard. The justifications were against self-interest to promote self-sacrifice for the interests of others. It was all about helping your community, or else you're a bad person who must be punished. If that year had been handled by an egoist standard, it would have been more like, here, we have this vaccine. It's available to take if you think you need it or want it. In any case, if you get sick, please do your utmost to not impose your illness on others and self-isolate until you are better. You are free to go about your business as normal whether you take the vaccine or not. That is perfectly egoist. It suits the government's interests in public health, and it suits the public's interests in deciding for themselves what they do and do not need, what risks they do and do not want to take. But instead, we were made to fight with each other over whose interests serves whom, with those refusing to comply with the selfish demands of others, and those people making the demands of others calling the non-compliant selfish and uncaring for not giving them what they want. It's why I say it was a tyranny. A tyranny forces you to take risks, to make decisions you don't want to make. This is also what happened in the red versus blue button vote. You are hypothetically made to choose between your own interests or the interests of others, and it purposefully pitted the altruists and egoists against each other. Doing over again a scenario where people on one side want to make their choice and be left alone to their choice, and the other side calling them selfish and uncaring for not complying with their interests. And speaking as an egoist, to the nearly 24 of you altruists who have tried in the past 3 or 4 days, I do not care for the demands, insults, and whimperings of the pathologically self-righteous. You cannot manipulate me. And to all the rest of you, I say, do not let these people manipulate you either. The rest of you are important to me. And I do not demand or expect you to sacrifice for me. I want you to live. I want you to look after yourself. And ultimately, if what I want is what you care about, then I want you to push the red button and save yourself. Don't worry about anyone else. They've made their choice. And you're not responsible for their choice. You're only responsible for yourself. So there it is. Egoism is the moral path because it understands and accepts you as a person have a fundamental right to operate within your interests. Egoism therefore works within the framework of mutual self-interest. It respects the autonomy of others and doesn't impose one's will against the interests of others. It doesn't coerce or blackmail into self-sacrifice, but it respects a person's right to self-sacrifice if that is their wish. It's not selfishness, and it's not self-righteousness. It's a healthy balance between fostering goodwill among others without being so vulnerable to malicious actors who would take advantage of that goodwill for their own gain, or their own suicidal empathy. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. Are you an egoist or an altruist? Have I convinced you of the virtues of egoism? And hopefully, perhaps, corrected some misconceptions about the philosophy. In any case, I'm done for tonight. I do wish you all to have an auspicious day, and I'll see you in the next one.